throw you a softball first. How about that?
Look at all these, look at this motley crew. Wow. Oh, yeah. You all ready?
The guys you chose to come here today.
Yeah. They've been in our program 4 years. They know what we're all about through the good, the bad, and everywhere in between. They're great leaders. They're great people. One of them's graduated. One of them's on target to be graduated, and one is on target to graduate in December. The next one in May. So they're just great people, great leaders, and good football players. They're everything that we want in our student athletes in our program.
Mark, you said no headlines. It seems like it was really important to you just to keep a low profile this offseason. Why was that just so important?
I didn't do anything different this offseason with y'all, I don't think. People have tried to insinuate that I've been laying low on purpose, but I think people would appreciate the fact that we're just working and we're trying to get better and we're trying to assemble a quality football team. And we have a lot of work to do. I think you understand that, and I think everybody understands that. So I think the people of Kentucky and everybody just in general would appreciate me putting my head down, going to work, and building a better football team. But it wasn't intentional. I don't think, did I do any less?
No, we normally don't do very much in off-season. Yeah.
I don't think I've done much less. Maybe y'all just looking for some ammo. So no, I don't think it wasn't anything intentional at all.
Mark, we haven't talked to you though since Vince left. It seemed like that was kind of tumultuous, like how it was communicated. All of that seemed kind of awkward at the end there. What was that process like?
Well, I don't think anybody that's making a decision to leave the program. I don't think there's any perfect way to do that. So I don't hold any animosity towards that at all, or towards Vince. I greatly appreciate our friendship and what he's done to help us build this program for 12 years, and he was instrumental in a lot of ways. But with that, I say the same thing about myself, about everybody in our program. I mean, it's about the program. It's about so many individuals and so many people that I think that's what the focus on. And this program and these student athletes and everybody, we're resilient. You just got to pick up and move on quickly. And so I greatly appreciate him. I still think the world of him. But we moved on quickly.
The perception, at least, has been that the position coaches had taken on kind of more active role in choosing who they were recruiting at their positions versus maybe in the past where Vince was running those things. Is that accurate? Is that fair to say that those changes were made?
Nothing was structurally different. Nothing at all. I think you can understand the landscape has changed in the last 3 or 4 years, in the last 2, 3, and so recruiting is definitely much different. It's imperative that we don't miss on guys. When I was a position coach, and I think I've told you this story many times, but I could go back to some places I've been where there was some pressure on you to sign guys. And at my position group, I was so critical because the last thing on earth I wanted to do was bring somebody into the program that couldn't play to the standard that we want. I think, so has it changed? Not at all. But we have to be very detailed, very precise on who we're bringing in. And so position coaches and area coaches have always been involved, always. And sometimes that doesn't get a lot of attention, but those coaches don't care. They just do their jobs. And so nothing really drastically, structurally has changed. I think it's fair to say the landscape changes year to year. And also the number of players that we take out of high school, with the portal being so important.
Well, speaking of the landscape changing, it's the first time we've talked to you since the rev share went into effect. There was a lot of uncertainties before. Do you know how it's going to work? Are you comfortable operating within?
Yeah, I really, it's new. I think every coach that spoke here this week, I saw bits and pieces, but all of us are, waiting cautiously optimistic that this will work, as we move forward. All of us, as far as the way we monitor it, everybody's staying within the budget and, penalties if you exceed that and things of that nature. But it excites me because hopefully it'll level the playing field and not just the people with excess NIL funds, so that excites me, and I think the proof is in the pudding this summer. I just like the approach. I like the way the recruiting has gone and the communication, the discussions with student athletes, and trying to stay within that framework, but I think it kind of levels things out.
Well, speaking of the NIL, though, last year you talked a lot about having to fundraise and the kind of burden it put on you. Mm-hmm. Is that gone? Is that alleviated by the House settlement? How do you feel about where you are in NIL?
Yeah, the House settlement definitely helps in that area. Again, if everybody plays by the same rules, then it'll all be even. And I think you can understand and right that probably always hasn't been the case, right? For a long time. So hopefully that'll even things out. But as far as myself personally and things of that nature, yeah, the transition, was different, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and even last year. This season, I think I've been on the record as saying it's been much better. I've really greatly appreciated the help. Mitch Barnhart and his staff and our fundraising arm of the institution has done an amazing job of helping, and I greatly appreciate that. And it let me kind of, put my concentration back on the team. And, I'm grateful for that and just, ready to coach.
Mark, last year between the Georgia and Ole Miss games, you all were playing as well as anybody in the country, literally. And then things kind of got away. I know there are a lot of new faces, but what lessons from first half of the year to the next half could the staff use this year?
Well, I think there's always things you learn, and we always have to get better in certain situations. And, I don't like to talk about, injuries and different things because they are excuses,
Right.
quite honestly. But I think it's fair to say going into last season, the injuries that we had the previous spring put us behind the eight ball. If you remember, going into spring of 24, we couldn't even tackle. We didn't have any physical practices. It carried over to the summer in preseason camp and through camp, and it didn't help us. I mean, again, I've never talked about that much. I mean, but just the way we practice, the approach, everything. We have to have the depth. We have to have the numbers. We have to have the strength. You have to stay, somewhat healthy, and it is what it is. But yeah, I think it's fair to say you always learn and adapt and try to get better.
What did you see out of the quarterback room?
Pardon me?
Quarterback.
I'm excited. Zach Calzada has a ton of experience. He's played a ton of reps. Cutter Boley is everything that I've talked about since he's been here. I just love everything about him, and his youthful exuberance and the way he plays and his talent. And Zach and him will continue to compete and play. This summer, and we'll see where it goes. I love having Bo Allen back. It gives us a guy just a steady person that's very smart and knows our offense very well and very comfortable with as well, while we bring along the young guys for another year. So, but, just like all of our guys, they're working hard, trying to get better, trying to compete, trying to gel and get on the same page with the receivers and tight ends.
Mark, even by current transfer portal standards, Hartley's offseason was unique.
Yeah.
Those conversations like with him when he left and then bringing him back. And
Yeah, I mean, Hartley is a great young man. I think, he I don't want to speak for him. I think he's on the record of saying I don't think he really wanted to leave. There's sometimes things that happen that I don't need to get into and speak for him. But I've always had a strong relationship with Hartley, and he has with our staff. And he's a great young man that's young and that's continuing to mature and continuing to get better, just like all of our players in our program to some level, right? And so we're glad to have him, and he came back and fit right in and is trying to improve.
Mark, on the injury front, just how healthy is the team heading into the fall?
Yeah, we are relatively healthy. We're in a good spot. I can't think of anybody, right off the top of my head here right now that won't be full go day one. So that's a good thing.
Mark, you've made a concerted effort through the portal to not just supplement, but transform your offensive line.
Yeah.
How happy now you've been with those guys for a couple of months? You brought in a lot of experience. How happy are you with that?
Yeah, I think we all understand that we needed to improve in that area and needed to get some depth. And, I really feel comfortable with that area. The one thing about the transfers in general, and it certainly pertains to the offensive line group, very mature players. A lot of playing experience, a lot of snaps under their belt, but very mature, and they're here, it's all business. And, they've been a great fit. I love the leadership that they brought in. I love the way they the first rule of leadership is take care of oneself, right? And they do that. And then they have an impact on their position group and also within the team. So I'm very happy with that group.
Mark, through the years, you've been the new guy. You've been the guy that's taken a program to 10 wins a few times. today, what do you anticipate, and what's going to be your message about a team coming off a season you clearly weren't happy with?
Well, I think it's very fair to say that we needed to take a good look, right, at what went wrong. So I think I've been very open about those things. I don't want to dwell on it. When I've stood here before, after 10-win seasons, it was all about this next year, right? So I think it's fair for me to address last year, but not dwell on it, and so, anytime you have a season like that, you better take a good look at yourself. So certainly we evaluated everything within the program, as we always do, because if you're coming off a really good season, you have to make sure you're capitalizing on the things you're doing well and maybe continue to exploit those things and get better. In areas where you fall short, try to get better. So it's really no different. I think I'm okay talking about it, you know what I mean? But I don't want to dwell on it because, again, I've stood here before, 2 times after 10-win seasons, which didn't happen a lot around here. And all I was worried about was the next season.
Right.
Mark,
Couple more.
What are the reasonable expectations for Seth McGowan, another guy you added after?
Seth is, I'm very excited about him. He brings a lot of juice, a lot of energy off the field and with the way he runs, with the way he plays. I think he's a complete back. He's an NFL back, and, we're happy to have him on our team.
To that point, you haven't explicitly stated it, but is it fair to say that a lot of the moves this offseason were about getting back to being that team that can run the football and beat you up in the trenches?
I think, that's fair to say because, you know enough about football that you have to do that, right? You have to be balanced. Of all the teams that have been here, that have talking all week, all the great programs in this league, right? There's not one bad one. You have to be able to run the football. Even if you want to throw the ball, you better run it so you can throw it, right? And so, we had to get better. We, in a lot of areas, as you know, but it kind of starts there. If you don't have a physical presence, I said that in my first my first media conference, right? When I was hired, that we had to be good on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think we fell short, at times, and we need to get better.
Hey, last one back here.
Mark, both Alex and Jordan talks about renewed buy-in heading into this season. What were some of the conversations like stemming from last season that might have triggered kind of a renewed focus for the guys around?
Yeah, I think much has been talked about that. Like, I think it's fair. I don't think it's something to dwell on. I think people make this big. I think you all need something to grab onto and do this and do that, and that's fine. I mean, but for us, it's business as usual. Like, we're always committed. Did we do things to the best of our ability times last year? Absolutely not. I've been first one to admit that, to talk about that, to address that. I'm not running from that, and the same with our team. There's things that we could do better. Let's hone in on that. It's a 4th and 1. We've talked about it's a 4th and 1 mentality. Like, 4th and 1, it's a critical moment, right? You need total buy-in, total concentration, total team effort, and that's kind of our focus right now.
Okay, folks.
Thank you.
very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Coach.